Welcome to Freethought Matters. I'm Laurie Gaylor.
And I'm Dan Barker. We are the executive directors of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a state church watchdog and the nation's largest association of freethinkers. That's atheists and agnostics. Join us today in our critical work to ensure that reason and our secular constitution prevail at FFRF.org. Or you can simply ask for a free issue of our newspaper, Freethought Today.
We're very excited today to have with us two champions of the First Amendment, Debra and Dan Weisman, who won a landmark Supreme Court case in 1992, ensuring that public school graduations protect freedom of conscience by staying free of prayer and religious devotions. This father and daughter duo will join us in a minute, but first we'd like to show you a brief video introducing the Lee versus Weisman case.
I remember him saying, "Please rise and thank Jesus Christ for the accomplishments of the students." I remember us all just looking around in bewilderment, like, doesn't anybody else find this really inappropriate?
The teacher who was in charge of graduation approached us in the hallway and said, "We know you were uncomfortable last time, so to prevent that, we got you a rabbi."
My family was never part of a synagogue. A rabbi up there was just as uncomfortable to me as a priest up there.
I felt there was nothing wrong with it. It was tradition, as far as I could see. When you have an invocation, it's the solemnness of a situation. It's not the prayer.
We're left with no option but to call the ACLU.
The ACLU and other groups had for a few decades been arguing that public schools should have no role in sponsoring prayers.
Now, joining us remotely from Massachusetts and from Rhode Island are Deborah Weismann and her father, Daniel Weisman. He's a retired professor of social work. And I think it's been nearly 30 years since we last saw you two. Thanks so much for coming on Freethought Matters to talk about why your lawsuit, Lee versus Weisman, and this principle of separation between religion and government really matters.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for having us. Nice to see you too.
Thank you.
So, Deborah, I want to start with you. Debbie, you were what age, about 13 when this case began?
When it all started, yeah.
Very
13.
young to be
Yep.
a champion of the First Amendment. Can you tell us a bit more about this case and how it began?
Well, it actually started with my sister's 8th grade graduation in '86, before mine, where they had a Baptist minister thank Jesus Christ for the accomplishments of the students. And my parents had written a letter complaining about it, never heard back, of course. And then 3 years later, at my 8th grade graduation from the same school, they remembered this had happened and tried to preempt it by writing them a letter and calling and setting up a meeting just to assure that it wasn't going to happen again, not to start any trouble. And the answer that they got was basically, "Don't worry, we got you a rabbi." So they misunderstood what our problem with the issue was, and they just planned to go ahead with a rabbi. So that was the start.
So let me stop you there, because there might be people who are watching who will think, "Oh, what's wrong with that? Isn't that satisfy you?"
No, I am uncomfortable with somebody else's religion being forced on me in a public setting, especially in a public school. Why would I ever want to force my religion on somebody else? It's my religion culturally. It's not my religion as a religion. I'm not a religious person. But I do identify as Jewish, and it's not the time and place, simply put. There's no reason for it. Separation of church and state is very clear and simple to me, and I've never understood why it's complicated for people.
Well, especially in the public schools. The public schools belong to all of us, no matter what your religion is or non-religion.
Exactly.
So Dan, you're the father watching all of this happen. And in the lawsuit, you actually became a plaintiff. Why was it important for you to be a party to this lawsuit?
Well, there's a piece of the story to add to what Debbie said. At the original 1986 graduation, it was a minister. The minister asked everybody to stand, hold hands in your row, hold hands with the people next to you, and bow your head and pray to Jesus Christ. And he said a prayer. That was more offensive and an assault than if he had merely said, I want to thank Jesus Christ for the accomplishments of the kids. That would have been offensive. This was more so. And I got angry for myself and for members of other minority groups in the audience from different cultures who didn't have the benefit of tenure. I had tenure. They could come after me if they want, and they did. And there was nothing they could do to my livelihood. But other people at the graduation had no such protections. And as a price for watching their children graduate, they had to sit through a prayer and participate in a prayer on behalf of the state, celebrating a religion they're not even part of. I felt it was very inappropriate, and I had a responsibility to push back. I wasn't looking for trouble. It came our way, and I just felt I couldn't let it go.
And I think what also offended me was that this minister was giving credit to Jesus Christ for the accomplishments of the students. This is supposed to be about the students, not about religion. So,
yeah, and I think, just without taking a lot of time, the role of schools and school activities is critical to both kids and their families. Schools convey the culture and the rules of our society. And it's important that the schools take that into account as they go about their business.
So I understand that when you were told there was going to be still invocations, this time by a rabbi at Debbie's 8th grade graduation ceremony, that the ACLU took this to court. And that must have been a very fraught graduation ceremony for you, Debbie. Do you remember that, how you felt?
Yes. Yes, it was, that's an age you don't really like having cameras on you. So to have all of the local news circuits there, and honestly, I was so embarrassed on behalf of my friends. It was their graduation too, and all these cameras were aimed at me, and that was awful. I thought that was awful. But the whole thing was still an exciting day, and I was with all my friends, and we were so excited to finish up and go to high school. So it was a great day. That was just an unfortunate part of it. But at least we were expecting it. We knew they were all going to be there. It wasn't a surprise. Whereas there'd be some days I'd leave school and there would be a news camera waiting for me, and that was different.
Yeah, very hard when you're 13. You were interviewed, you and your dad were interviewed on C-SPAN when you realized that the case was going to go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we wanted to show a little clip of you then, talking about your reaction.
How has being the focus of all this kind of affected you since then?
It's gotten a lot more than I ever expected it would. It's amazing, every time I stop and think about it. It's really incredible that we're going to be a part of history, especially, with the U.S. Supreme Court and everything. It's pretty incredible.
So part of history, and we should hasten to say, this case was won. But I wonder, before we talk about that decision, if we could show a little clip we have of your mother, Debbie, and your wife, Dan, Vivian, talking again about how she felt about this prayer.
When he was imploring everyone to stand up and thank Jesus Christ, I mean, my mouth dropped. I've been at a lot of things with these very civic, prayers, and we would have just let that pass. But this was like, whoa, I know I'm not the only one that's feeling really like, what are you saying about me here when you ask me to pray to Jesus Christ, and I'm a Jew?
So Dan, the case, how long did it take for this case to get before the Supreme Court?
Well, the hearing was, if I'm correct, November 7th, 1991. It might have been the 6th. So Debbie's graduation was 89. Am I right, Debbie?
Yeah.
It was 89. So it took 2 years. There was no argument, no disagreement between the two sides as to the facts. So there was no discovery. It went right to hearings. So it saved probably years in typical process.
And then in 1992, the Supreme Court ruled in your favor. That had to have been a huge day for you. For you both.
It was overwhelming. We expected to lose. We counted optimistically. This is optimistically. We would lose 7-2. We were hoping we wouldn't lose 9-0. And the ACLU helped us prepare our statements upon losing so that we would come across appropriately. And then when it came down that we had won, we were not prepared for that. It was unexpected.
What was the split?
5-4.
Well,
5-4.
I remember the key vote was Kennedy. And Kennedy, when the we know from the records that have come out since the decision that the original Supreme Court vote was 5-4 against us. Rehnquist was Chief Justice, and he assigned Kennedy to write the majority opinion. Kennedy later changed his vote to our side because he got concerned and disturbed about the little girl involved, Debbie, and what it would mean for her to have to miss her graduation because of the choice of who gives a prayer. So he changed his vote.
So we have that quote about talking about his concern. Dan, do you want to read that?
In this society, high school graduation is one of life's most significant occasions, and a student is not free to absent herself from the exercise in any real sense of the term voluntary.
So we were so pleased when Kennedy did come forward with that ruling in your favor. But what was the reaction? I know that you would have gotten a lot of love. We gave you a Freethinkers of the Year award at our 1992 convention. We were so pleased to meet you. But I know that you also had a lot of pushback.
You know, I want to say we were very lucky that this was pre-internet because we did get a lot of pushback and a lot of hate mail through the whole process starting even in '89, we would get some hate mail, but nothing like what would happen today. We didn't have to deal with what we would have to deal with today. So we were very fortunate in that sense. We got some great support letters from people all across the country saying that they'd been in the same situation, but like my father was describing, they couldn't speak up and say anything because they couldn't risk losing their job or just being isolated in the community, or for whatever the various reasons were, they weren't in the same position that my parents were fortunate enough to be in. So that was great to know that we had that kind of support out there and we were helping other people.
Well, Debbie, I remember you told us in 1992 how pleased you were that you were featured in 17 magazine. Would you ever have imagined that?
That was crazy. They had me write an article. That was really crazy because that was something that was on my level. It was my age, whereas a lot of these other things were, you know, CNN is interviewing us, what have you, which is big and exciting, but not on my level at that age. So this was something that was unique.
Now, we have to take a break, but before we do, I just want to show a visual, though, of some of the horrible hate mail that your family got, and a lot of it was anti-Semitic. But you won, and when we come back, we want to talk with both of you about the legal import of your case, some of the legal principle behind it, and also why it's so terribly important that this case should stand and how it is being threatened now by changes on the U.S. Supreme Court. So we'll be right back to talk with Debbie and Dan Weisman.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinker. In my book, Enlightenment Now, I show that the world has become a better place as reason has been overcoming superstition and tribalism. But the values of the Enlightenment are under attack. That's why I'm a proud member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of free thinkers working to keep state and church separate. Please join me in supporting the Freedom from Religion Foundation to ensure that our government is driven not by religion, but by reason.
My name is Gabrielle Hinahara, and I'm an atheist because I believe in the power of doing good for the sake of doing good, and not because some divine entity tells you what is good and what's not, and not because you think it will get you into some sort of heavenly afterlife. I believe in human morality, which is why I think that most cultures across the world have come to the kind of same basic principles and values, such as the Golden Rule, which isn't based in religion, but is based in human interactions and mutual respect. And I think a lot of people turn to religion because it makes the choice of morality really easy, black and white, right and wrong, and you don't have to decide which is which. And in my experience as being an atheist through my life, I've found that moral choices are something that I think about a lot more than a lot of other people because nobody's telling me the answer. And since I don't believe in an afterlife, pretty much my whole meaning in life is based on my interactions with other people and that I can leave this world a better place by my actions.
Thank you for watching Freethought Matters. You can find more content by the Freedom from Religion Foundation at our website, ffrf.org. Follow FFRF on Facebook, and you'll get notifications about all of our content, including whenever we go live on FFRF's Ask an Atheist. FFRF is also on YouTube, where all of our programs, including this show and our weekly news bites, are available to watch anytime. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the web.
And welcome back to Freethought Matters. We're continuing our conversation with Debbie and Dan Weisman, who are true champions of the First Amendment, talking about the 1992 Supreme Court victory about prayer in the public schools. So Dan, you know a lot about the legal background of all of this. Why is this case important in the big picture of state-church separation?
It's probably a little bit bigger question than the time we have today to cover. I can try to take a shot, and I'm not an attorney, so I wouldn't call myself an expert in this. My understanding is our case was based on the so-called Lemon test, Lemon. It was a previous church-state case in which the Supreme Court ruled that there were 3 criteria, all of which had to be met in order for a state action to pass muster with regard to church and state. Let me see if I can get this right. A state action could not inhibit or promote religion. It could not entangle the church and state in each other's activities. So I can get back to that in a second. And the third can promote.
It had to have a secular purpose.
It had to be secular in nature. It had to be inherently secular in nature. So that was the Lemon test. We argued that, our lawyers, ACLU, they argued that the activity we had been part of, the prayer in the school, violated all 3 prongs of the Lemon test. The Supreme Court, should I stop there?
Well, I was going to say, I just want to say that we owe a big debt to Alton Lemon, who was one of our honorary directors at FFRF and the freethinker himself, who took that case. And of course, that case is somewhat endangered. They don't usually talk about it that much. They've sort of revised it. But your case cinched it that it applied to the schools, correct?
We wish they did. And it's a bellwether for what might be ahead of us. The decision, as I read it, was based on a coercion test rather than the Lemon test. It's mentioned, it was argued But ultimately, the rationale that the court used was that Debbie had been coerced into a religious situation she didn't want to be in. And that was the basis for the violation.
But I think that the Supreme Court also has always said you don't need coercion to show a violation of separation of church and state. You just have to show state sponsorship of religion. And in Debbie's case, Justice Kennedy, who wrote that decision, said that she shouldn't have to absent herself. That it, you shouldn't say it's really voluntary if the only way she can avoid religion is by missing her own graduation. So,
well, that's what I'm saying, and I can see. I'm concerned. The court has changed considerably, and I'm concerned. I think we all are that we're going to see a shift in the rationale and the degree of tolerance the court will exercise for more intrusion of religious activities in schools, public schools.
So before we talk about that continuing threat, Dan, do you want to read another quote from the decision?
From the decision?
A strong quote.
The lessons of the First Amendment are as urgent in the modern world as in the 18th century when it was written. One timeless lesson is that if citizens are subjected to state-sponsored religious exercises, the state disavows its own duty to guard and respect that sphere of inviolable conscience and belief which is the mark of a free people. To compromise that principle today would be to deny our own tradition and forfeit our standing to urge others to secure the protections of that tradition for themselves.
So very, very strong wording there. And we do worry about what will happen because we have a Supreme Court that is much more extremist in a bad sense than the court that you were before in 1992. And I know you say that that worries you a great deal.
Absolutely. And if I can, because this little piece of so much of this case is on the back burner in terms of public, sharing with the public and in the coverage. But the entanglement part is sort of important. We discovered in the course of arguing or appealing with the school's activities that the school board gave priests, rabbis, ministers, anybody else who delivered a prayer, guidelines for what they could say and not say in their prayer. That's entanglement. That's the government telling religious professionals, practitioners, what they can say and not say while giving a prayer. And that I think that's pretty significant for people who don't see what's the big deal. You're going to sit through a prayer. You're not going to be hurt. Well, think about how the institution of religion is hurt.
Yeah, the state can't go to somebody's...
They can practice.
The state can't go into some church or synagogue and say, here's how you must pray to your people. There should be a total separation, and the separation should be both directions.
So Dan, you must be awfully proud of Debbie. And Debbie, I want to ask, looking on this almost 30 years later, even though you're still so young, what does it feel like? And how do you introduce to your friends and new acquaintances your role in legal history?
It doesn't come up with new acquaintances. It is something you still have to be a little careful of because you don't know where they stand on things, and that changes how you talk about it. But any of my close friendships, they all know about it, and it's always surprising to me how interested in it they are and how excited they get by it, and I end up reliving everything and talking about a lot of the things we've talked about and some other stuff. But, if they're close friends of mine, we are similar thinkers, so they tend to agree with us, and it's always an interesting conversation and a positive conversation. I've learned that you can tell people who know about it and don't talk about it, or they'll mention it, but then never ask any questions. So you know how they feel about it, and you just don't discuss it. There's no point.
But briefly, just about a minute or so left, how do you feel about it now, 30 years later?
It feels so long ago. It really feels so long ago. But it was a whirlwind, and it often feels like it happened to us, not that it was something that we did. We just kept saying yes. It just kept continuing, and we just spoke our minds. But it took a life of its own, but it's something I'm very proud of. I'm very glad we did it, regardless of some of the hate mail we received. And I did have some confrontations with classmates in high school who said some pretty awful things to me. Despite all of that, I'm glad we did it. It brought us together closer as a family. I feel badly for my sister, Meredith, because she's just as much a part of this. She was just away at college, so wasn't there to sign the papers, and it wasn't her graduation that was the actual court case, so her name isn't on anything, but she's just as much involved in this. Same with my mother. My mother was out of town, so couldn't sign the papers, so that's why it's me and Dad. But it's all four of us.
Well, thank you so much for taking this case and for talking with us about it today. Such an important victory.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Freethought Matters.
Because free thought matters.
I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no religious body seeks to impose its will, directly or indirectly, upon the general populace.
Let's restore respect for America's secular roots. Help the Freedom from Religion Foundation defend the wall of separation between state and church. Join us at ffrf.org. Freedom depends on freethinkers.